On air.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The time when we ask for topics from the floor, anything that's not on the public hearing agenda, if you have something you wanted to talk before the planning commission. Seeing none. Does anybody have any comments on the planning commission minutes from last month?
I'll make a motion, we accept them as presented.
Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, I abstained since I wasn't here.
Okay. All right. Time is now 7:01. The public hearing is now open. This is a quasi judicial land use hearing. The subject of this hearing is a request for a variance. The subject property is identified on the county assessor's map as lot 1400 on map 4N1W5 DC. The applicant is Jacob Hanna. The owner is the same. Because quasi judicial proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, we'll take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. As a member of the commission wish to declare an ex parte conflict of interest or bias in this matter? None. Anyone in the audience object to the ability of a commissioner to make a fair decision? None. The general order of proceedings will be as follows. Required statements, staff report, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, neutral testimony, those opposed, rebuttal by applicant, final questions, close of the record, deliberations, and decision. Following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to City Code and ORS 197.7635. The following is a list of the applicable substantive criteria for this decision. See known as Municipal Code 17.108.051. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria as described or other criteria in the plan, such as the comprehensive plan or land use regulation, such as that found in the development code, which the person believes applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue, including constitutional or other issues, relate to the proposed conditions of approval in this hearing in person or in writing, or failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the approving authority an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, on that issue and precludes an action for damage to circuit court. Staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a variance for an accessory structure and to allow an accessory structure larger than what the minimum maximum size would normally be. So just so you understand where we're at in the world, this is a property accessed off Columbia Boulevard, but it's not right along Columbia Boulevard. You see an image up there of Google Earth showing the home with the little arrow and address on it. And it is accessed by a shared private driveway, which Google Earth has highlighted there. It's a 20-foot wide easement. At its narrowest point, the driveway is about 10 feet in width. And it's a large parcel comparatively for city standards, in that it's 2.8 something acres around here. Another very important feature to understand is, as you know, we have significant wetlands with upland protection zones. And one of those is this big old chunk, and you can see the tree line in there. And so a significant portion of the subject property and then adjacent properties have this protected wetland on it. So that's kind of the premise, so you understand what's going on generally. So there's a few things to consider. One, the variance itself. The variance is to allow an accessory structure larger than normally allowed. And then some of the wetland stuff, how that plays into it. And then finally, paving requirements. That's on the menu for tonight for this particular property. So first of all, the core variant stuff itself. So the variance to allow a larger size, because the property is greater than 2.5 acres in size, the normal maximum size increases from what would normally be 600 square feet in gross floor area to 1,000 square feet. The applicant proposes fairly larger than that, a little over 1,700 square feet with a 20-foot height. And because of how secluded the property is, even though it's in the middle of town, and at least on one side, there's a substantial buffer. Staff doesn't have a lot of heartburn over a granting of a variance for the size proposed. We've seen some of these before in this property. You know, this is the kind of property we have variances for because it's weird and funky. And it's weird and funky because of the access. Now, that would be a substandard road based on the number of dwelling units accessing it now. Fortunately, it's not a land division case. We don't need another one of those that goes nuclear, hopefully not for a while. The point of that is in relation to this variance is there's not a lot of strong potential to divide it further. So it becoming a smaller parcel is not terribly likely. It's kind of this hidden parcel, so it's not very visible and on most sides. And you have the wetlands, which helps add a buffer. So all those things definitely make it unique. And so, you know, as far as allowing a larger structure from a staff standpoint, said no heartburn. Now the applicant, and when the applicant first visited City Hall, you know, we talked about the location. And I have been on this property before. The original house was actually kind of in this area, more or less, generally speaking. And when they wanted to replace that house.
I don't hear very well.
No, that's fine, yeah, that's fine. So when they wanted to replace it, you know, we knew of the wetlands being there. And this was over 10 years ago, so I'm really reaching my memory banks.
It's gotten a little wetter.
It has gotten wetter, yeah. So, but they put that house on that far east side, because by doing so, it took any question out of interaction with the wetland. So that was an easy conclusion for us to make. Okay, it's over there, no issue. When the applicant came in and talked about putting a new building, you know, we talked about kind of putting it on the western side of the area that's not within the tree canopy. My thought was, well, I don't know. We'll take a site visit and kind of draw some conclusions. Now, the core of our code says that when we do something on property with a significant wetland, we can require environmental assessment. That just means the wetland person goes out, marks the boundaries, and the surveyor creates a map for that purpose. And then sometimes deals with the agencies to make sure it was done right, of course. But our code says that we can exempt that when we can draw conclusions that looks like it's not going to impact it at all. Now, having done this for a long time and having been on the other side of how could you let person that do that? How about this person do that? You're not gonna let me do this, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, I need a certain level of comfort to be like, yeah, this is totally cool. And in this case, I don't have that comfort level at the desired location by the applicant. And in the staff report, we're not saying, well, there's no way you can do it there. We don't know exactly where that wetland boundary is. And so if you looked at the conditions, one of them, so assuming you're cool with the variance, okay, well, we're cool with having a large accessory structure. But there's kind of two options embodied in the proposed decision. One is that the building and the improvements are in an indisputable location outside of the wetland boundary. And an example of that is to the south of the existing dwelling, another accessory structure there. I think that's an accessory structure along that east side. So just like we did when the house was replaced, everything is on the east side. So there's comfort level that there's no impacts. If the applicant wants to pursue the current location, it's not necessarily a no. We just don't know where the wetland is and the wetland protection zone is. And so
I can tell you exactly where it's at.
we don't have the science or expertise to be able to draw that conclusion. I did kind of walk the property because I talked to the applicant when he came in, you know, about this, and there's some clear standing water further back. And if that was the wetland itself, you know, it may be okay. But I've seen so many of these where you have the standing water, but then well outside of that is that wetland boundary. And so after seeing those, well, anyways, so that's why we have it structured as it is. So another location may be okay, but we would need that environmental assessment and possible sensitive lands permitting as well. That doesn't affect having a large structure or not, but one of the things that we have to consider in this case. Another thing to consider, because it's a variance, it gives the planning commission an opportunity to be flexible, and that's with our paving requirements. So the city code says that any area traversed on by vehicles is supposed to be paved. It's supposed to be paved with asphalt, concrete, or similar material. Now, in this case, there is some paving in front of the home associated with that new construction from about a decade ago or so. There's kind of an old loop grandfather driveway, gravel driveway in there. So we kind of have two suggestions for conditions in this regard. And the first one is kind of the nice one, for being nice. And that is no gravel allowed within 50 feet of any wetland or riparian corridor. And if the applicant goes for just pushing everything to the east, you know, that'll be a little bit of judgment call on our end. But the first 25 feet on the back end of that private driveway be paved. And the basis for that is our code has some exceptions for gravel. And one of those says, but when you're abutting a public street, you want to make sure the first 25 feet back is paved. That way you're not getting gravel into the road, creating a mess, causing damage. The basis for 25 feet back from the private drive is that these private drives are intended to be shared. And nowadays, if they were created, we'd have a maintenance agreement and it would be required to be paved. And it's that same theory that, all right, well, if the first 25 feet is paved, then it's creating less debris and damage impacts to the private drive. And, you know, over time, as other property owners do that, will help with the integrity of it. So that was a way to be like, all right, because in their narrative, if you notice, the applicant had mentioned gravel. But we have this paving requirement, but it's kind of on the end, and it's a street that'll likely never be extended. So the other staunch city code approach is all areas necessary for vehicles related to the accessory structure must be paved. So that's something to put your thinking cap on. And let me sure I covered all the conditions. Yeah, the rest of them are just kind of generic stuff. There's a variety of images and maps in the staff report. The aerial photo helps kind of put it all together. So I wanted to make sure that was up there for your viewing pleasure. And that concludes the presentation of the staff report.
I have a question for you. You might expect regarding the wetlands. When you walked around the site, you couldn't quite tell, say, where the wetlands boundaries are. It looks like in your report here, you've got this a fill area that's higher than very farther, maybe farther to the west. I can't tell what direction that is. You said there's about 2 feet of fill material above the natural nature grade, foreground and right. Does that mean to the east of?
That's looking south there. So the right would be west.
So
In that photo,
higher towards the house.
that's correct,
And
yeah.
lower, it is higher toward the house.
Yeah,
Okay.
a little bit. Just the grade is not substantial.
Yeah.
You know, when we have a canyon and the wetlands at the bottom of the canyon, that's a little easier.
It's not a sharp decline
No.
fill slope.
There is a decline, it's not very sharp.
And so, and I don't, and this, and we're not trying to be punitive, we're just trying to figure out, well, where exactly are things at? This is probably all old, because old debris.
Yeah.
It's not new stuff from what I can tell, because there was debris piles and stuff out there when it was purchased by the property owner.
All right. We're just talking about the debris pile to the west of the.
Yeah, because
Okay.
because that's where they want to put the building.
Yeah.
And that's where like, God, where's that transition zone?
Okay, so the other question I have is, did you submit a wetland land use notice to the Department of State Lands regarding this, so you could get some type of something official from the Department of State Lands, you know, based on whatever information that's office information.
No, we failed to meet our obligation for the wetland land use notification process.
And then you would get that product that you so desire if you had done that.
Well, but it wouldn't have been a delineation, it would have been,
No.
we think there's wetlands here and we already know that. And I'm not trying to defend ourselves for not doing it. Yes, we did not do it.
Sometimes the decision can be made without a delineation.
Oh,
If the building was, let's say, in my experience, after work for that agency, in front of those houses and those shops in that gravel parking lot, if that was where the building was gonna go, the wetland sign, jurisdictional coordinator at Parsley Land say, based on where you want to put it, you're not gonna need a permit. It doesn't really matter what the wetland boundary is. It's clearly not wetland.
yeah, we also have to think of the protection zone, which is a
Yeah.
city matter.
So it sounds to me like it's fuzzy enough, you probably wouldn't have been able to make a definitive statement like that anyway. You'd probably say this is pretty fuzzy, I can't really tell. This needs a wetland delineation to deal with. I'll recommend a wetland delineation if you're gonna fill more than 50 hectares, something like that. Anyway, I just asked.
Yeah, no,
You
it's a
did
good
wetland land
question,
use notice.
yeah.
Okay.
In fact, My colleague and I talked about that this afternoon. That very matter.
Okay. Any other questions for Sam?
But do you feel we need that before we go on?
Well, he has conditioned in here.
It's not that.
I cover that, I guess.
Yeah, there's more testimony opportunity too, so.
So, any other questions for staff? All right, now we have, the applicant's presentation. Are you the applicant?
No, I'm not. I'm a property owner that my property backs up against where they're gonna build a building.
Well, you could have
Are you Jacob?
Yep.
you could have an opportunity later to
I
speak.
would rather that we would have talked before all this happened, but.
Yeah, he wants to hear us better, so that's why he's
No,
sitting.
That's fine.
You're fine. I just don't understand what people say.
Oh.
I mean, I'm an old guy and you talk with a soft, pleasant voice. I mean that with the most respect.
I also brought Brookfoot to some of this being a little bit, so.
If you wouldn't mind, the applicant.
I'm sorry?
Can the applicant come?
Oh,
sit?
absolutely. Yeah, I'd be perfect.
You're welcome, you're welcome to.
They were
yes.
here before me and they're more than welcome. And I would rather that we meet some other way as neighbors than this.
So if you could hold any more talking
Yes, sir.
with until we have a chance, there's an opportunity for you to do it. So the applicant,
Hi.
what you got for
My
us?
name is Jacob Hanna. I'm the property owner that's in question here. I just wanted to, I mean, Jacob covered a lot of it. I was just looking for variance to build an outbuilding that I was able to be able to store a couple RVs and a large boat and some trucks in. They're currently sit in tarps out in the weather and on the property. I was looking to kind of clean it up and get some stuff put away and have a nice outbuilding that would accommodate the tall vehicles. That's the 14-foot eve requirement is one of the things driving the height. And then the overall size is for the large trailers. I'm been working with Jacob on trying to figure out a good location and it doesn't impact neighbors or any of that. So I definitely want to work with all of them to find the right location that's not affecting the wetlands. Floodplain, I mean, it is the property is really flat, like Jacob said, there's not a distinct line of where it would be. The water does sit back in a creek way back in the forest. So yeah, from reading through this, it sounds like we need to do some impact studies to see what it would take to get that approved.
As it's written and given your desired location.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the proposed location to the east of the building there is gonna create more problems with property owners along that side that I have spoke with. That had kind of eliminated that, and it would require a larger driveway put in out there in that front of the building, which the location where I'm proposing is trying to use as much of that pull through existing driveway as there is. To stick, yeah, that's why I chose the location, try to use the driveway that was already there and not have to disrupt my neighbors as much as possible with the size, because over there it's almost surrounded on three sides, bro. Three sides it is by trees and it's not even visible really from Columbia Boulevard. Over to the other proposed location, and I've got a relationship with those neighbors, it would be.
Are you talking right here?
No,
Other proposed south.
the south where it was proposed in there. That's basically putting a large structure up right in front of people's back windows, and that would be their view with their outdoor living space in their home. So I was not really interested in pursuing that to do that to those neighbors. I do want to meet my new neighbor here that I have not had a chance to meet and hear what he has to say.
You got the most respect. Yeah.
So, yeah, I've lived at the property just over 2 years. My wife and I bought it.
Nice.
So is there any questions or you have for me? What I'm trying to do?
So we're discussing a variance on the size, the location. Could be variable.
That's the way we have it structured, yeah. Which we don't normally do, but because of the wetland, it's like, well, it's, and this may work. It's just a matter of having the documentation that shows where that line is.
So if it's within the 50-foot buffer or protection zone, you'd have to come in for another variance for building that.
We'd have to look at our sensitive land rules and if it can be permitted under the sensitive land rules, it would be administrative. Wouldn't be before the planning commission.
Okay.
Now, you could, as part of this, say, well, we don't want it to be administrative, we want to have a shot at it. Because I can elect to give the planning commission things at my level. We've done that occasionally, like the middle school, the high school, those kind of big public projects.
Any other questions for us?
I don't,
I had one question. What are you thinking as far as paving, or what are you hoping for as part of the decision on the paving could be required?
my current initial plan was to just use the existing gravel driveway that was in place and just maintain that. We need to look at other options. I know the shared driveway, we share, that Jake was talking about, there's 5 tax lots that have a road maintenance agreement, and it is partially asphalt, partially gravel. I help maintain that through my property. I maintain the gravel.
I don't have a good feel for dimensions. If the first 25 feet were paved, there would still be a gap between that and your paved area in front of your house, then still be gravel.
It would probably be a pretty small gap. It would get you really close. The asphalt, and I don't know if so the asphalt stops about the back of the white vehicle right there, yes. So that vehicle's not on pavement. And the asphalt, it was really just a pad right directly in front of the home when it was put in. That's the existing asphalt.
Where would 25 feet of asphalt come to?
About the other side of the car, from the property line about to the car, yeah. It would be somewhere right in there.
Just pave the rest of it. Okay. Any questions on the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any testimony in support of the application?
I have someone on Zoom.
Okay.
Mr. Fields.
Yep, that's me. My name is Nathan Fields. I'm at the property just north, I think, right? Is that right? Okay, I'm at 2715 Columbia. That's where the backside of my house is, butts his property. If from my point of view, it won't do anything like as far as visually distracting from my property. If anything, it would help establish a property line there visually and physically. But yeah, just as long as it's not overly impactful. The wetlands may be a creek during prior to the rainy season, but once the rainy season kicks off and towards the end of winter, my front lawn tends to become a pond. It's very wet wetlands. And I don't feel as though that, from my perspective of living here for a few years, it wouldn't affect the property too much, but I would be interested to see if somebody would get out there and or on our whole property over here and see if there's something that needs to be surveyed properly. But as long as it doesn't like cause any hardships or anything like that with him, I'm a firm believer in property owner rights. So I have basically I have no problem with him putting a building there as long as it doesn't flood my garage. But I don't see how it could.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any other testimony in support? That's time for neutral testimony. You don't care one way or the other.
I'm sorry?
You have a neutral testimony. They don't care one way or the other, or
Well, yes.
or an opposition.
Yes and no.
I guess that's.
I'm also an advocate of what property owners, if you have property, you should be able to do with it within reason.
Can I have you state your name for the record, please?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Can you state your name?
My
for
name is
the record?
David Baxter. I own property 2725 Columbia Boulevard. It backs up against, the property. If you had the other picture up there,
This one?
well, not necessarily that, but the one before that you were.
Oh, the Google, yeah.
City planner. Yeah, that one. First of all, do you people come here often? Do you come here often? Would that be a yes? I suppose you do. I really appreciate the ability in a small town to be able to get up and say these things. There's a lot of places where this sort of thing doesn't happen. I also understand many of you that give up your time. I know you're well paid for all this. And so you give up your time to do community service. I've retired from the fire department 25 years, so I have some, feeling for that. But I don't particularly have any particular objections to it, which we're talking reasonable, which begs some explanation.
Where's your property?
Could you move this over just a little bit?
Yeah, this way?
Okay, see this, that's my house right there. That's my shop. You can barely see it. But along this area between Nathan and Jenny Fields, there's a creek that runs down here and it terminates about right in here in the wetland. And where this is proposed to be building, it looks like to me that it's going to, I'm surprised that Nathan Fields but he's a really nice guy. Because it's flooded 3 times in here in the last 17 years. There's a drain up here on Columbia Boulevard that gets plugged. And his house, his foundation is right on the ground. He's had to have pumps in there to pump it. I'm surprised he didn't say anything about that. But anyway, he's a nice guy. He's got a bunch of kids. He didn't want to make any, problems for his neighbors. But my concern is that if they build this property in here, they bulldoze this, they fill it full of gravel, all of the water level is going to increase. The other thing that I'm concerned about is there's a lot of critters that live in there. Honest to goodness. I mean, when we first moved in back in 2004, there were raccoons or possums. I don't know what happened to them, but there's a pretty good sized raccoon that lives out in there. I don't know where they go this time of year, but if you throw something out there, it's gone the next morning. The other thing is there's deer and there's squirrels and we all like that sort of thing. I've got pictures of deer in my backyard, but my concern is that one of my friends that was a contractor told me, oh, in the old days, we just bulldoze that, fill it full of rock and build whatever the heck we want on there. Fortunately, there's a lot of people that are a little more concerned about, their environment, and even in the city, you have deer in the city. It don't happen in Los Angeles. And so anyway, they have enough trouble crossing the street without getting whacked and that sort of thing. If that building was built on this end or in this area in here, this is all above the wetland, and you can see by the growth that that's probably true. But my concern is it okay if it gets built? And it's just like all of the property on the other side of Columbia Boulevard where they built all that tract homes in there, those are all built up. So the natural run of the water ends up in one place. And my foundation is 30 inches high. So if my backyard's got 12 to 18 inches of water in it, it's annoying. My shop, it almost flooded just within an inch or two last year. But again, I'm willing to take that chance to be a neighbor because I want to be neighborly. And the way things are going, which all of you, I think, are well aware of, unless we help each other, or we're kind to each other, or we can get along with each other, we're looking at some pretty dark times. This is my opinion, but, so those are basically my concerns. I took a few pictures out there, not that, you know, you probably have some of these anyway, but this is looking at the Fields place. This is that creek. It's full right now. If we get 1 or 2 inches of rain in a row, I got about 10 inches of water in my backyard. Now, granted, my shop is built up, you know, it has on the thing, but that's my yard right now. It's got water in it, obviously, but it does, and that's just a normal thing this time of year. But that creek terminates right in here, and this is pretty close to where he wants to build that building. And it terminates out into the wetland, which would be,
Can I ask you a quick question?
I'm sorry.
When you're saying that it terminates around, right around in here.
Well,
this is
that's
the
where it
lowest-
actually
This the low level water spot.
That's
right
where it
here?
actually stops, and then, of course, it bleeds out into the wetland as well. There's probably other fingers off of that.
Thank you for the clarity.
Well, and again, I'm an advocate of property owners. Now, if you own something, the size of the building, I'm not overly concerned about, because if you go back to the other picture we had a minute ago, this guy built this building here. You can put a semi truck and trailer in it. So, and on this end, it's 3 foot from my property. On this end, it's 7 feet. And so, but it sets a precedent for a large building. If you go across the street down, there's another trucker guy that has a pretty good place. And if you go down the other way past the school, there's a couple of pretty good sized buildings for motorhomes and whatever. And so there's a precedent set for building it larger than what the regulations call for. So I'm not concerned. And the fact that he's going to use it for a motorhome and a boat, you know, I'm concerned here. You get 1,700 square foot, that's bigger than my house. Is it gonna, they're gonna turn it into a house, a living place down the road, and you know, sell it to somebody else or whatever? I mean, so that answers that question, and I'm all for that. But like I say, I'm surprised that Nathan didn't make more of a. I'm really surprised, but I'm more concerned for them than I am for myself, because they got 5 little kids, you know. But nice guy, you know. And what else can I say? I don't know if there's anything else. That it's flooded 3 times in 17 years I've lived there. And although it hasn't impacted my house, I'm not all that concerned about it. And like I say, it is a wetland. Several people have wanted to buy the property, and they were told by the city they couldn't because of wetland. Because they wanted to obviously use a lot more, but I don't know how much of a percentage. Some guy that wanted to build it, he had a overlay of the actual wetland several years ago or some years ago, I'm not sure. And according to him, the city told him that he would have to have a study done on that property in order to determine exactly where the wetland and the buildable land is. But to have that large of property, own that larger property and not be able to do anything with it, you know, is not a good thing either. But this is all wetland in between the 2 houses too. When we bought the house in 2004, the realtors, one of the big real estate companies, said they couldn't build on it because it's wetland. And so that's my only, but I don't have any particular objections per se, especially if it was built out on any of this stuff. Of course, that doesn't give them a lot of room or anything like that, but in this obvious area that's not wetland, I wouldn't have any objections whatsoever. And I'm not overly objectionable to where he wants to put it, but I just, appreciate the fact that I'm able to come here and express my feelings, and even though, what's the old story? Well, they let you say whatever you want, but they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do anyway, it doesn't really matter, but I don't think that's the case here. I think that the people here have some concern for the community, and it's nice to live in a small, where you know, we still have this. I can't imagine somebody's property in North Portland that's got homeless living next to it, you know, would not be real happy about that. They would welcome,
Thank you for your testimony. We're here every month.
you're most welcome, and thank you for indulging me. Thank you for indulging me.
Yeah.
Mr. Baxter, Mr. Fields says he has 6 kids.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Fields has 6 kids.
Oh, he does? Oh, would you happen to know?
He just said, you just
Oh.
told me to tell you.
Oh, okay, well,
I'll let
I'm
you know,
not
I'm
involved
trying to
in
keep
this
up with
person.
him. My 4th is
I'm
on
not
the
involved in this person.
You may stay up here if you wish to hear better. It's okay. I just,
I'm sorry?
you can stay up here to hear better if you want to.
Well, I didn't,
Thank you.
I don't want to upstage.
Oh, you're okay.
Did you, want to, rebut any of the statements that were made by the previous 2 people? You can,
Oh,
if you want to.
I would wish my neighbor and I had met and come over and looked at it before, but the place where I'm proposing to build the building has never had standing water. It's up on the same close to within an inch or 2 of the same grade as the house. So it looks like it's in the trees. A lot of that is overhang or smaller trees, but it's substantially up away from the standing water. And I've worked closely with my neighbor that spoke. And so he, like he said, it shouldn't impact, and if it was going to impact the wetlands, then we would have to move it. And I'm open to moving it closer to the house. I was just that location was to try to use the existing driveway.
It's always a bit of an engineering issue when you're building wetlands, not just a right.
Yeah,
So,
but and then as far as this,
sure, solve problems. You know.
the structure itself, it's going to be a pole barn. So there won't be any excavating or digging out of the ground to put in foundations. It's all going to be, there'll be some posts put into the ground, but the grade will stay the same as it is.
You want to drive it a mud. Inside.
So thank you again for your time.
Yeah. Did anybody have any final questions of the applicant?
Could you go back to the Google Earth picture and just pan it out so we could see where it looks like it butts these houses on the right, the other direction? That's good. I just wanted to see what was on.
If we put it on the other side of the house.
Yeah. Neighbors would be looking at, if you move the building to the other side of the house?
The 2 to the east, right below Columbia Boulevard. That is a fence line. They've got the big outdoor living space, and they look into my yard and all the wildlife. My kids feed the deer, and we do like to interact and see all the wildlife come and go. That is all planted grass yard too. I have a play structure, and the kids are kind of set up to stay on that half. That would all essentially turn into driveway to pull big trailers in front of that building, and that building would.
And the location of the old house would still be within the wetlands, or that?
This is the old house.
So the old house is farther to the left where the brown, that's where the foundation came out of the ground for the old house. But that is starting to get dropped below the grade of the home. That's heading, it's like Jacob said, it's a gradual grade, but that's starting to head down into the trees as the farther away you go. But yes, that be another potential location. I think you'd be getting closer to that.
Jacob, if they had a wetland delineation done and they have the actual jurisdictional boundary determined, does the buffer go up to determine the delineated boundary? Not
Yes,
from your
there's
inventory,
50-foot upland from that boundary.
not from the inventory horse boundary.
No, the inventory, it's a 90s product, so things were a little more generalized.
But actually, it actually was, they only had to be plus or minus 25 feet for local wetland inventory, so it's not very precise.
No,
It's not It's not wrong, it just says there's a wetland there somewhere.
So, and we, we have them delineated and, oh, okay, well, that's a pretty substantial difference than that old inventory. So we've seen that many times, but the wetland boundary determines where the upland protection zone boundary is. So they're both assumptive based on that older inventory.
It's good to know where that is, so you know what you have to work with. It's a valuable thing. So even if you sold the property, the next guy's gonna need to know that too, so it's a good thing to have. All right. Let's see. No further questions from the commission, no further responses from staff. The public record is closed. This matter is returned to the table for deliberations and oral decision. And it's just the something to make a final decision on, or is this something
This
to make
is-
a recommendation?
This is in your authoritative ruling.
This is,
So you have the final decision unless appealed.
we don't have to get to this landing. You should put it 50 feet away from it.
Sure seems like it to me.
So the way it's written in the staff report, you could recommend per staff, and the only thing that there's kind of some flip-flop on is the paving requirement. And you can go with the nice paving requirement where it's you're making sure we're avoiding gravel, new gravel within 50 feet of wetland, and then you get that 25 feet back from the private easement, and then the main one is all areas needed for the accessory structure shall be paved.
So is this 25, this 25 feet is from his property line? Or the
Yeah,
house?
because it was, so if you remember, so you have Comby Boulevard, and then you have that easement. So he is on the other side of that easement.
Okay.
So the 25 feet would be 25 feet back from the easement. The idea being, okay, there's a new building proposed, we always have to consider these paving requirements. And by paving 25 feet back from the easement, now his and his family, especially when his 4+ kids get older and start driving, and they have all this room for their vehicles, that's gonna help minimize the wear and tear on the private drive. And codes aren't perfect, right? Because codes don't cover all situations. I think that would address the purpose of the code because of where the property is on. It's basically on a dead end. So if you're protecting the wetlands, you get that first 25 feet, the essence of the code is solved.
Was it 20, so is the easement driveway paved?
Partially.
So there'd be pavement, gravel, pavement,
Starts and
little
stops.
chunk of gravel.
And that's kind of what you have now.
Okay.
Yeah, right now, it's paved off of Columbia Boulevard, and then some gravel, and then there's some pavement. So it's a bit of a patchwork now. We're not asking the applicant, at least it's not proposed, for them to pave anything on someone else's property. But to pave the portion on theirs to help promote the longevity of the drive surface of the private drive, especially if those neighbors pave in the future.
then why can't there be something that says when the neighbors pave, he paves?
That would be impossible to track associated with a building permit.
We'll let the neighbors know.
So can you put up this image?
Sure. Back in the, what page?
It's in there.
I think that's an image provided by the applicant.
And is that building gonna be
It's
50
the last
feet from
page.
Okay.
the wetlands?
Well, we don't know. That's why we're talking about,
Delineation,
yeah.
that's what's,
So the variance, if it's approved, is for the size of the building. And you can give the variance, but then the final determination of location would all depend upon the wetlands delineation.
That's right.
So basically, what,
that's right.
So this is like others where you threw this in there, it really doesn't have anything to do with the variance. Right?
Yes, that's correct. It's related because it's a circumstance of the site.
Yeah.
And whenever we have to consider variances, we have to consider impacts to systems and rules. And so there is some relatedness, but since we're kind of focusing on the variance, we have these other issues that we need to address. And so we're just kind of encompassing them into it.
So which way are we looking here? Is that
So this is from,
Columbia Boulevard.
yeah,
Looking south.
looking at the easement.
Yeah,
So
okay.
and then it's gravel.
the gentleman with the 6 kids, I believe that is his house to the right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's that tree line behind the house. That is generally where the applicant wishes to construct their accessory building.
Where's the asphalt stop there?
So
The drawing.
Yeah, right there.
Farther to
Yeah.
the south again.
Then
This
it's,
drawing is
In
incorrect.
front of this house.
There's like a little bend, I think, where
yeah, there's kind of, in one of the pictures I took in the staff report, you can kind of see it on the first page.
you guys are making me work over here.
Yeah.
No, no trees are coming out,
You're a
correct?
better mouse.
I don't believe any trees are proposed, any that haven't been removed already. So you can kind of see it there, where there's partial pavement on that side. So that is also, so the picture on the right is also looking south, but essentially you're close to the end of the private easement. You're not quite on the subject property yet, but that tan colored manufactured homes in the center of the photo, that is the home on the subject property.
Property line would be on the south side of that silver vehicle. That silver vehicle is parked directly up. It's the neighbors in the Wetland.
You have some, yeah, so you have some partial paving that are like bookends.
So they would propose pavement would start off from that pavement going to his yard.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, that's correct.
Can you educate me on what gravel does to wetlands?
It doesn't have anything to do with the wetlands.
What's this?
It has to do with the road, city road, right?
I thought I read somewhere
That's-
too about
yeah,
gravel. in
that's the way I
regards to
read it.
wetlands.
Yeah, our code prohibits gravel within 50 feet of a wetland.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's why.
I think it's to control what is absorbed into the ground. I guess, some of these rules were created before I was here, so.
I'm not sure, gravel's pretty inert. It's not vegetated, it's gravel. Maybe that's why.
Me, the paving looks like,
Because it's to get it, so, a wetland, just gravel right up to the wetland. Have no buildings there, but at least the sensitive lands buffer is not gravelled. Is that what you're saying?
That's normally what they do when they build. is-
Yeah, new gravel would be an impact to the sensitive, to the protection
Yeah.
zone.
Right.
But then there's a separate section that talks about the surface requirements. And under the list of stuff where there's the gravel exceptions, one of those is not within 50 feet of a wetland. Doesn't talk about the protection
So
zone.
you have pavement within 50 feet,
Yes,
but not gravel.
if it's found not to impact the wetland or protection zone. See, this is when these laws get complicated because you have all these different layers. And we have to constantly think of all the different layers, but then we're trying to explain them and it's like all this information.
Gravel will percolate the water and asphalt will let it run to a certain area, they change the whole.
And it's pollutant, it's a pollutant. No,
Right.
anyway.
Well,
Codes aren't perfect.
just wanted to confuse things a little bit.
Yeah.
She asked the question.
I'm just curious. It's a good question. I did the same.
So any other discussion that's actually germane to this variance a size of a building?
I think we should,
You have a motion? Wait. What?
what are we deliberating? What are we doing?
We're in deliberation.
Oh, great, great. I think we should approve the building size and then all he has to do is get the wetlands issue taken care of. And he's gonna have to place that out of that area.
And what do
The
you want with
asphalt.
the driveway?
And then the driveway. What about it?
25 feet of gravel or asphalt or?
And are we going to have to
That's
put
part
it
of
in
this
front of the
package.
garages too, or this building too?
Excuse me?
Is that part of putting it in front of the building too, that one apron that comes into the?
Yes, yeah, because we always have to consider paving requirements when we get a new building that's gonna accommodate vehicles. So because it's that kind of building, that's why we have the paving requirements in there. If
There were two choices.
the planning commission is not hell bent, and it sounds like there's just confusion over rules. You know, the first choice would be the just 25 feet back from the property line behind that private easement, and then not within 50 feet of a wetland. That would be the
Least amount of paving.
yes,
So then the other part is all areas.
All-
where vehicles-
all areas necessary.
All gravel would be paved. Or just loop, everything.
or the turnaround area. So the more lenient one is the first choice.
First choice.
We want to understand when you're ready.
Yeah.
So the easy motion is as recommended by staff, and then for number 3, option 1.
Right. I'll make a motion that that's what we do. The 20 feet, 25 feet.
All in favor?
Right.
And that's it. I guess I think it's right here. So. Anybody want, does anyone want to make a motion to have the chairperson sign the final decision?
So moved.
All in favor? All right. Final written decision of the planning commission may be appealed to the city council. The notice of decision will be mailed to all persons who testified or submitted comments, and the appeal deadline will be included in the notice. Make sure you signed in. Right, thank you.
We'll be talking more in the future.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
I'm jealous of that shop size.
Luther and Mr. Carey. Jacob, I can't pronounce your last name, no offense. Appreciate you for indulging me. And, it gives me some hope to see the city where people are actually concerned about the property owners. I really appreciate it.
It's always nice to have feedback.
Yeah, thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
Zip off down the road. I'm sorry, I need to put my name on there.
And your address, if you want to get a written copy of the
Please.
decision. Yeah, just make sure your address is in there. And,
All right.
Mr. Fields probably also wants to written this. I got his address too. Okay, great. And he was asking questions about the, what the result was, so. Okay. Clarify.
So the time is now 7:58 PM and the public hearing is now open. This is a quasi judicial land use hearing. The subject of this hearing is a request for an annexation. The subject property is identified on the county assessor's map as lot 500 on map 4N1W8 8DB. The applicant is Michelle Eggers. The owner is Bart and Janet Grahorn. Because quasi-judicial proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, we'll take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Any member of the commission wish to declare an ex parte conflict of interest or bias in this matter? another.
No one else on Zoom.
Does anyone from the audience object to the ability of a commissioner to make a fair decision? We have one person there.
I don't object.
Okay, thank you. We'll keep going then. Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows: required statement, staff report, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, neutral testimony, those opposed, rebuttal by applicant, final questions, close the record, deliberations, decision. Following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to the city code and ORS 197.7635. Following is a list of the applicable substantive criteria for this decision. CNO's Municipal Code 17.08.040, 17.28.030, and 17.112.020. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria as described, or other criteria of the plan, such as the comprehensive plan or land use regulations such as that found in the development code, which the person believes applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue, including constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval is in this hearing in person or in writing, or failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the approving authority an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to ALUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, on that issue, and precludes an action for damages necessary report. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's me this time. So this is a annexation and we are on the highway, just south of Les Schwab Tire Center. The new Les Schwab is right here in this photo. If you can see it where my cursor is. The subject property has this cyclone fence along it. So we received this annexation and they would like to use our development code rules and eventually connect to city utilities. So this is kind of the first step in that process. It's rare that we have an applicant to talk about an annexation, so I'll let her speak to that if she wants to later. So the property itself, it's about 2.26 acres, so it's fairly small. It's a corner property, and I'll show the map in just a second, but it abuts a little side street called First Street along here. So it's got street frontage on two sides. This is what the frontage looks like along First. So you can kind of see there's a curb here and there's the highway out in the background here. The only thing on the property today is a pretty small structure, probably under 200 square feet. It was probably used as an office of some kind. If you look back at old aerials, this property had a lot of storage of materials on it. So it's been cleaned up substantially in the recent history. There isn't any history of land use on the site, so anything that happens on the property is going to have a land use permit. It's totally flat, although there's quite an elevation from the highway itself. So it'd be a really good visible location for something commercial that you can really see from the highway. So from that respect, you know, it's a good piece of property. There's water and sewer available on this side street, First Street. So that's really good for the applicant. They don't have to extend the main line to get utilities to the site for whatever they decide to build. You can see the existing frontage improvements along the highway on this photo. There is an existing paved driveway approach and a curb that's got a curb cut already kind of established along First. So all of those things are kind of helpful in the redevelopment of the property. So tonight we have a recommendation to City Council for this annexation. We always send notice to utilities. Columbia County Land Development said they'd support the annexation because this property is within our UGB. County Public Works just said no comment. They don't mind. All right, so let's go to the map here. Just to orient you, city limits is right here at Les Schwab, and the property we're looking at is just right here on this corner. So this is Dahlgren's, just to the south. So there's no city limits south, but we're just bringing that boundary further south. And then across the highway, there's highway commercial. I'm sorry, heavy industrial city limits. So we have similar uses in the county as the city. It was C3 county zoning. The only annexation option for zoning is highway commercial, so just continuing this highway commercial zoning south. We don't have to worry about any traffic impacts because the uses are similar from the county to the city. We don't have to worry about capacity for our water system. Our sewer system can support the annexation of the property. I think that's about it. So we've got a comp plan zoning of unincorporated highway commercial. We would zone it incorporated highway commercial. Our only zoning option is highway commercial. So I recommend to council that they annex this property.
There's a recommendation on this one.
Yep. Yeah, all annexations go to council for final. Yeah.
So did they hear about the sale we had on annexations?
The sale, yeah.
We've been going through
So
it.
there were 3 of them at the last,
Yeah.
it was a marathon. We did them all in 10-minute chunks too.
What
It was
what
just
was
like-
this, buy 3 and we get this one for?
Yeah.
And they're learning to channel you with the statements that have to be,
Oh, this is great.
doing it very quickly and.
As fast as possible.
I've got a problem with that being First Street, being I live on First Street down here. How did that get to be First Street?
It's because, St. Helens St. Helens and Holton were totally different cities.
Oh, okay.
The problem is it was platted a long time ago and they weren't worried about that kind of things. And when the street name got up and, it's not the first time I've heard that. Our past fire marshal was concerned. The one thing, at least it's First Street as opposed to north-south first.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is weird that it's
Going south first.
Mail goes to River now, Steve delivered
So I don't know if anything would have
my
an ad,
planning packet.
I don't know if anything would be addressed off of First either, because you've got Kavanaugh here and the highway frontage on the other 2. So it may never come up.
Where's that parcel that was gonna be the mini market gas station?
It is right
Yeah, houses.
here.
Yeah, right on the.
It is the collection of properties, yeah. So these 2 just got annexed as
Right,
part of
okay,
that,
those
and they were connected here, yeah. So this popsicle looking one.
And we annexed the big triangles behind.
Yep, these are the Mark Comfort, yep,
Mhm.
that's turning into a travel trailer park. Yeah, it's just moving.
And the rest of it was annexed
Going fast.
all since I've been here.
Yeah.
In the middle, so.
All those.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for staff? All right. We actually have an applicant here who'd like to make a presentation on your annexation.
No, I was gonna have to give a speech. You don't have to, if you're here.
Come up here and tell all the wonderful things.
Yeah, this doesn't happen often, so welcome.
What's your future plans for the property? They're interested.
We didn't board here by sitting by ourselves. So, thank you for coming.
So my future plans, what I'm hoping to do is put a coffee shop in there. Reached out to a few local companies, haven't got a really solid lead yet, but hoping to find someone. It just seems like a great spot with it being very visible and on the commuting side of St. Helens. So yeah, that's kind of the plan.
Why do you want to be part of the Helens?
Come on, you guys aren't that bad.
There's a sock club right there, this is home joint.
Yeah, this,
What do you gain from annexation?
well, then I can hook up to utilities, whereas before I think there's just electrical there. But else, so
It's useful.
A lot of Panda Express instead of a coffee shop.
you know, if it was a little bigger, I think maybe more about more of a restaurant, but I think it would just be too small with parking. I think the coffee shop or a drive-through of some sort would be a little more successful.
Any questions about? It's a pretty simple, we usually don't have much to ask you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And
And it is a small site, to fit all the drive-through standards could be a little challenging.
Yeah.
She might come back before you and ask for a variance.
So how big,
It must be an R5
then? The chicken place going in by Grocery Outlet, how big is that chunk of lot?
Oh, the Popeyes.
It's not very big. The thing about that lot though is there's shared accesses from the surrounding properties.
We don't have to depend on,
Yeah, it's not exclusively dependent on everything within its property lines.
much smaller than that though.
It is.
This is only 11,000.
Oh, it's the Popeyes.
Yeah, but we have to pull it up.
I did a Dutch Brothers, with 10,000 feet.
Here you go.
Pretty aggressive on
So they'll be parked down the First Street trying to get in there.
Really bigger site.
Yeah, they're kind of in the wrong spot, so it's definitely one that I've it's on my list.
I wish I did.
Oh, relocating.
Upstairs, so.
Okay, well, thank you. Move on, sit there if you want to.
I'll probably go get some dinner, if that's okay.
We'll be done here pretty quick.
Well, really be good then is if you come to the city council meeting when it's actually approved. Now, that
Yeah,
one,
I'll make it to that one too, that's
you'll get a lot of kudos for that.
the one in January, right?
19th.
I'll be there.
Okay.
Hopefully you're local and that wasn't too far for you.
Oh, no, I'm just in Scappoose.
Great.
Well, thank you all.
Drive
Have a
safe.
good evening.
Thank you.
Good holiday.
Thank you.
All right, well, we had the applicant's testimony and all the support and all the opposition and all the rebuttal, and we're not with that. There are no further questions from the commission, no further response to the staff, the public record is closed, this matters need no deliberations, an oral decision. Now you can talk.
Make a motion. We go with staff's recommendation of approval of the annexation and zoning. Page 6.
To go, any further? The final written decision of the planning commission may be appealed to the city council. No, we're not saying.
You have the option.
Oh, okay.
You gotta read
All
the
right. I don't have to read
fine
that.
print.
I don't have to read that one anymore. Okay, good.
So they recommended approval.
Okay, clear.
Another second.
Okay. The discussion on the acceptance agenda versus planning decision. Matter.
That is a discussion.
What is that?
Okay, so for as long as I've been here, there's been this acceptance agenda where the planning commission votes, oh yeah, we're cool with that. And then there's planning director decisions where, well, you received it, do you care? I have never been able to figure out what law, provision, rule distinguishes between the two and why we have that formal process with this group.
I think it was something that just got started about 3-4 years ago and it just kept going. And I don't know why it even started.
I think it was longer than that.
Yeah,
'Cause it was-
it's been a long time.
Yeah,
Predates me.
so it's been at least 10 years.
So and
It could be.
Yeah.
and so what's happened is over the last several meetings, we're like, okay, yeah, what goes on the acceptance and what goes on the plan director decision? And it was like, well, what is this? So this is the discussion. So you receive all these by email, which is great, because the whole idea, at least the way that I see it, is that it's one, it educates you on stuff going on and, oh, okay, well, those kind of things.
Well, it gives us an opportunity within 14 days to question it.
Yes, it gives you that,
Right, but after 14 days, we really don't have to do an acceptance.
and it's a check and balance. It's
Right.
like, hey, planner, what are you doing, you know?
Yeah.
So, but to have a formal vote, and maybe you still want to, but that's the question. It doesn't seem like we need those categories. It seems like it could be all under planning director decisions, and if you have a question, we could talk about, if not, we could move on. But, I wanted to talk with the commission about this.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I
Make a motion,
we don't even need a motion, we just drop it.
That makes it legal.
Because if you chose not to make a motion on an acceptance agenda, it wouldn't, it's already been approved.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
we
what
did
difference
it
does
for-
it-
Throw them all together.
Yeah.
As
we-
planning
they're
director's
all-
decision.
They're all FYI.
So
Well, the only one that we would, is if it came in 10 days ago, we would have the opportunity to still question it.
Yeah. Or, ask questions or
Yeah,
clarify, yeah.
so,
because it's been a long time practice, it's probably good that we do have a motion that's approved, just to,
Have records.
We have a motion to combine them and not have something we have to accept. Second.
I'll second it.
All there. He's gone.
we just made it that much easier.
Yeah.
You just took a headline out.
Template just went.
Yeah.
So that's in 2022, so we still have to accept this thing.
It's true. There's one more.
So Snoopy Land, we had this previous, who was gonna go in
Yeah,
there?
let's go for some moving approval of it.
So this was a covered playground area,
Yeah.
unrelated to the modular Columbia Health Services building that is
Yeah.
being relocated to that property.
Do we have a motion to accept that?
I just did it.
And a second,
I'll second it.
and all in favor? That's the last time you'll ever do that.
Because it means a lot.
I feel cool.
Well, let me pause for a moment and mourn the passing.
I think we celebrate the evolution.
Oh, no.
Gun toting Granny's occupying this house. Sounds like an occupation problem.
Already.
Armed occupation.
One of the best business names I've encountered.
Don't drive up that street.
The business owner is quite the character too, a very nice person.
Do you wanna talk about the planning department activity report for November? Anybody see anything that they?
Did we have interviews?
Yes.
Yes, and it was, that's on my list to talk about. It didn't become an agenda item because it was all kind of, it all ended up being very quick. And in fact, I can talk about that now if you like.
Yeah,
But
that it was
what
the
interviews?
FYI that you had.
There's the position interviews?
Mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
Steve Toskey said.
what's- How many applicants did you have and?
So we had 4 altogether, but 2 of those were from some time ago. One of them was from last year, and it was a younger person. And at that time, I asked them if they wanted to, interview later on, and so, but it seems like they lost interest, another person lost interest, so we had 2 people that we physically interviewed, one with a attorney background, another one with an archaeological background. Actually, both would have been really good candidates for the commission. Ultimately, though, the interview committee felt that the attorney was the better fit, and the archaeologist, he'd only been in town since August, so, not a lot of time for roots to sit, so.
Really wants to get involved in the community in other ways. Actually, we interviewed him for the budget committee.
Oh, did you really?
Yesterday. So anyway, but yeah. Good.
So in any case, the committee was pretty unanimous on nominating Steve Toskey. Toskey, yeah, Steve Toskey, And so the formalities will be for the commission to accept that suggestion. And then it just so happens time-wise, tomorrow is the planning, or excuse me, city council meeting. So if the planning commission so chooses, then the counselor can present it tomorrow at the regular session for acceptance. And that means,
January.
yeah, we'll have that position filled in January.
That's good.
Some very interesting conversations.
Yeah, well, I think it's gonna be a good fit going into.
Very good.
Going into bigger deals that were to be confronting us with the waterfront and everything. And, he's a pretty high-powered attorney, not that we need an attorney, but his mindset is
Different
not
than
like,
any of
not
ours.
like any of ours.
Well, that's good.
It's kind of like when we have wetlands and someone else.
Got hit, yeah, so, yeah.
They're not stuck with them all.
Yeah, no, I work for him, so he doesn't know anything about building, we know that, so. I believe further.
Very much so.
Their meetings are gonna run about 2 hours longer.
Oh,
These are great.
Why is he your pick?
Hear me, so, you know, lollipops and
So
stuff.
we didn't say that, Russ. No, you tell
No,
us.
no, I think he'll be good.
I think we'll be right to
You can
the
just-
point.
Elbow him.
Oh, well,
He's
you
your
can sit
friend,
next to me.
right?
I have him right here.
Well, he lives kind of between us, so we can both get. This is nothing new. I was thinking as I'm leaving the house, we're gonna be a parade.
Oh,
We could get a
call the
bus.
traffic jam.
We might get a traffic light down there at the corner at first. Make it a three-way stop.
Oh, no, not this town.
Yeah, get that.
Do we need
that
to vote on
turn
that?
right.
Yeah, we need to make sure that the planning commission does agree with the recommendations of the interview committee. And so we need to make sure the planning commission as a whole, something our city recorder wants to make sure that we do. So we do
You
need.
want a motion?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I move that we, a second. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I support it too.
You didn't vote.
I know I'm not a voter.
Aye. Well, you know, she felt bad that she couldn't hear me vote, so I voted that.
Okay, good. Well, I think, you know,
Yes.
tomorrow. So that'll be great news.
Any more information items from anyone?
Maybe ours is the same.
Maybe, go.
The Riverwalk
Yes.
open house is tomorrow at the Recreation
That's
Center
right, at
on
5
Old
o'clock.
Road. It starts at 5. It goes till 7 and it's come whenever you want. The materials are just gonna be out. You can look at them at your own pace, get your questions answered. So it's a 30% level design for the entire Riverwalk. That's the stage we're at. And there are really exciting renderings of certain parts of the Riverwalk. And I've seen a sneak preview and they're amazing. So I'm really excited to share them and I hope that you can come.
It's 5 to 7.
5 to 7, but you don't have to stay the whole time.
No.
You can come, leave. There's a brief overview or like introduction at 5:30. So if you want to hear the consultants talk, you can come then, but it's gonna be quick and it's just gonna say like, here's this station, and this station. Have fun.
Did they refine some things since our last
Yeah.
attack meeting?
Yeah, and there's just prettier visuals, like you can see it 3D rendered as opposed to just 2D on a map.
Nice coasters.
Our last,
Yeah.
our last TAC meeting, we actually met in person. We walked around out on the property and did lots of visiting and said, "Phew, this has gotta go." So we're changing the, so that's pretty major decisions. It was great to be out there and walk around and say,
Because he did like change the orientation of the stage from the,
actually, they'll
Right.
have the accessory structure.
and that, right, but all that kind of stuff, so yeah.
Did we end up putting it up against the beer garden?
I don't know that we specifically, so that design will get to 100%. So I think the exciting thing about tomorrow is mostly phase 2.
Okay,
Phase 1 is a little component, but there's gonna be more check-ins with phase 1, because we'll take that all the way to construction. So I'm most excited about the phase 2 stuff,
okay.
and that's the stuff I have to go around and turn around and try to get funded.
Money.
So
Money,
the
money.
visuals for it are like,
Okay,
that's the gold for me. Yeah, so,
been really fun.
Yeah.
I took a vacation day just to have fun doing it, it was great.
that's all I have. Yeah, it's at 1810. Double check that address. 1810 Old Portland. Yeah,
1810, say again?
1810 Old Portland Road.
Phil Farah building.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
bricks
On
down.
the Boise property, yeah, across from McCormick.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that was the
It's
FYI.
adjourned.
I'm
We're
always.
done. Unless, did you have anything more?
No, that was the
Same, okay. we're done.
FYI and the.
Good job again. All right, we're done, I think.
Happy holidays.
Yes.